created a space where we can celebrate the unsung and the undervalued. A place where we focus on the many talents and influences for women within the culture, in hopes to inspire women everywhere to overcome adversity in a male-dominated world. Welcome to Woman in Hip Hop. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Woman in Hip Hop Podcast. I'm your host, Jazzie Belle, and on this show, we focus on the many talents and influences from women within the culture. And today is going to be an amazing show because I have an amazing guest. She is a former music executive for both Def Jam Records and Arista Records, and she is responsible for some very legendary hits in both R&B and hip hop. And I'm so excited to be talking with her today. Y'all say hello to Drew Dixon. Hey, Drew.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm ecstatic to be talking to you today. I've been following your journey for a little bit now and just kind of been on the gram. I can't wait till the podcast get back up and running again because I would love to have her as a guest. And you're here, and I'm honored.
So happy to be here.
So I know a lot of people is familiar with at least On the Record documentary that's currently on HBO Max. And we're going to get into that. Okay. But I really want to have fun with you today. And the thing that I love about you is that you have so many accolades that I just want to have this episode be dedicated to honoring you and all of your accolades. So can we talk about that?
Oh my gosh, I'm about to cry over here.
We'll bring some tissue if you do.
Yes, thank you. It's something that I really kind of didn't think about for such a long time because I kind of put the whole chapter behind me.
Yeah.
And I realized after I spoke out about the bad stuff that happened to me in the music industry that I had also cut myself off from all the good stuff and the things I'm really proud of. So one of the greatest things about coming forward is that I am getting to kind of reclaim my own story and memories and share it with my kids who are like shocked.
Yes.
And with, in situations, in conversations like this, it's really amazing.
Yes.
The gift. Thank you.
It really is. And you're so welcome. Oh. And so I'm glad that you said that because this is what we're going to do today for you. Right. We're gonna celebrate your accomplishments. So first thing first, I like to give people somewhat of a backstory. And I know you grew up in D.C. So talk to me about growing up in D.C. and when you first fell in love with the culture, hip hop.
So I grew up in D.C. when it was still a predominantly Black city. I was born in 1970, so I'm old.
No, seasoned, honey.
Seasoned. And both of my parents were involved in politics. My dad was a city councilman and the chairman of the city council. My mom went on to be the first Black female mayor of a major city. So I grew up very involved, knocking on doors, passing out flyers. And so, Black culture and Black liberation and power and politics was kind of like our family purpose, our family mission, and in some ways our family business. So I grew up with that, and I felt like it was my job and responsibility to in some way give back and contribute to my people. But I also was a music head always.
Okay.
And I grew up, whether it was Luther Vandross, Anita Baker, Earth, Wind & Fire, Stevie, that was the soundtrack of Washington, D.C. We had 5 Black radio stations when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So, but then I'll be honest, in school, I was like into alternative music. I was like the Smiths, the Cure, so my sister was actually very amused when she got my business card at Def Jam because at the beginning it said Drew Dixon, director of A&R R&B. I don't know why they even said that, but she was like, R&B? She's like, really, Drew? Because do you even listen to R&B? I was like, yes, I listen to R&B. But I was, I soaked up R&B, but I sought out kind of alternative music. And when hip hop, I was a Prince fan too, Prince, Sade, they were kind of alternative. I was a big Michael Jackson fan. But then when hip hop happened, and I first became aware of hip hop in the summers because I went to, this is kind of an embarrassing way to explain discovering hip hop on Martha's Vineyard.
Okay.
But, I
was bougie.
Right. I was on Martha's Vineyard, 8 years old, and the kids from New Rochelle were talking about Rapper's Delight. And I was like, what is that? And hip hop, I started to fall in love with hip hop because it was Black, but it also felt alternative. It felt rebellious, like alternative music to me, right? Because it was underground.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it also had so many lyrics. You know, it was just dense with the wordplay, which I also kind of connected to alternative music because it was like that poetry, kind of like the brainy wordplay of hip hop, and the rebelliousness of hip hop felt like very much like my lane. But then the tracks were soul. The tracks were Black, you know, soul loops.
Right.
So for me, hip hop was like, yo, this is it. Like this is my sweet spot. So I fell in love with hip hop, and then I went to Stanford. And then my mom ran for mayor, and I came home, worked on her campaign, and I went to Howard for a year.
Wow. Okay.
And when I was at Howard, I was there when Puffy was there, Mark Pitts. You know, I don't think I knew Puff then. Like he was around, but you know, hip hop was like bubbling. Like, you know, I threw parties. I threw these Wednesday night parties called Nights with Flavor.
Nights with Flavor.
Nights with Flavor. And that's when I really was like, wait, like hip hop is more than just like music that I love. It's a movement and it's an industry, and I want to be a part of that. And that's when I just decided I had to figure out how to do it. And I found out about A&R, and I was like, that's the lane for me, because I was always the person who was like picking the new stuff, you know? And I was like, okay, how do you do that? And that was how it all started.
That's so dope. I remember, because in the documentary, you talk about your parents being politicians and you being a part of that campaign and being in control of some of the acts.
The music's at the inaugural ball.
Yeah, talk about that.
So I got to play on like the youth stage for the inaugural ball. And I was like, okay, great. I'm gonna pick my favorite artist. We tried to get Tribe, but I think they didn't come because they wouldn't wear tuxedos. And I was like, I don't care. But like whoever was like in charge of the whole thing was like, no, they have to. So I was like, okay. We got Kwame.
Okay.
We had
polka
dots for sure.
You wore tux?
Yeah.
Polka dots?
Yeah, polka dot.
Nice.
I think it was like a polka dot bow tie. I can't remember if I remember. Wait, did we get third base? I think we had third base. And we had Rare Essence, because I'm a go-go fan.
Yes.
I'm from DC.
Well, DC.
You know.
The home of it. Yeah.
So exactly. So, you know, that was like my first kind of taste of, wait, I can do something here.
Yeah, you were already like in the mix.
A
Didn't
little
even
bit.
know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, wait, okay, you know, I had to figure out who to call at the labels to get the artist. And that's when I was like, wait, the labels, I should work for a label. Like that's where it's going down. And so when I went back to Stanford for my senior year, I created a vision board. And it was kind of like my favorite artists, you know, like Brand Nubian and Run DMC. And I also fell in love with West Coast hip hop because I was in California. So Too Short, you know, like Ice Cube, NWA. I remember I was driving with a friend on like the El Camino Real when I heard Snoop for the first time, and I had to pull over. I was like, I can't drive right now. I need to just stop and listen to this. Like, what is happening?
So dope.
And I just, you know, I had this vision board with my favorite artist, but I also had Russell Simmons in the vision board because I was like, that is kind of the blueprint, you know, for what it means to not just make these records, but to make these records relevant and to create a space in the culture for this music to get oxygen and to get, you know, bandwidth and to be seen and heard. And I was like, yeah, like I want to do that.
So you graduate from Stanford and you moved to New York City.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, to be exact, right?
Well, yes. I mean, actually, I'm going to be straight up. I didn't graduate right away. I had to take some classes at NYU, but I eventually did graduate.
Okay.
But yeah, I came to New York. I answered phones at Jive Records, Warner Brothers Records, and I was living in Manhattan then. But then I moved to Brooklyn in a brownstone with a bunch of friends who were all somehow affiliated with hip hop. Like
nice.
Matty C, who wrote the Unsigned Hype column, but the Source was in the top floor. His girlfriend Lee, who'd gone to high school with me, was in my apartment. It was 3 women with boys' names, Drew, Lee, and Tony.
Wow.
In the garden apartment. And it was hot. We had no AC. We wanted to throw parties. So Lee and I went to the hardware store, got like rakes and cleaned up the the yard.
Yeah.
And we threw parties, and Maddie would push his turntables to the window on the top floor and DJ. And Maddie had written about Biggie, because Biggie was around the corner. He was still doing entrepreneurial activities at the time.
Street pharmacist.
He was, exactly. Walt White. But so Maddie knew Biggie. So Biggie would come to our parties. And I was then, by that time, working at Empire Artist Management as the receptionist. So I knew like Primo and Guru and J. Rue. And so they would come through. And, you know.
You were in the mix.
It was the mix. It was 1993.
Okay.
And we threw these parties in our backyard, you know. Party and Bullshit was out. You know, he had just gotten signed by Puff.
Okay.
And, yeah, like, you know, Come Clean was out by J. Rue. I mean, we were killing it in the backyard. And, but I was still answering phones, hopping the train. I mean, for real. It was, you know, I was making like $1.99 a week, I think.
Okay. You were thugging it out. You were paying your dues.
I was. And, you know, I mean, my story is crazy because my mom was the mayor still. And so when she would come to visit, you know, she would get like a security detail, you know, because she was the mayor. And they would like, we would have dinner and she would drop me off. And then she called me. She's like, so the police who like were in my detail said that you shouldn't live here. And I was like, well, maybe they shouldn't drop me off because like I'm going to live here.
Yes, Mom.
And they need to just stay out of my mix, you know?
Right, yes.
And she was kind of like, are you maybe going to go to law school? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Wow.
And, you know, I stayed and I kept answering phones. And then anyway, yeah, that's how it all started.
Now, just to give my audience some, I guess, further context and go a little bit more in depth when it comes to who Matty C was at the time.
Who?
Maddie, is it Maddie?
Maddie, oh, yeah,
Maddie C.
Maddie Capolongo, Matty C.
Matty C. He, at the time,
He wrote for The Source.
The Source, right.
He was part of the Mind Squad.
Mind Squad. And I remember seeing Notorious B.I.G., a picture of him in Unsigned Hype.
Yeah.
And that was what Matty C.
wrote that column.
He wrote that column. And I want to say that's how, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you know all the facts, because you was in the mix. That's how he got on Puffy's radar.
As far as I know. As far as I know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
House parties with Biggie. Yeah. Give me a Biggie story before we get any further, because we need a Biggie story that no one has heard before. You know, coming straight from Drew Dixon that lived in apartment in Brooklyn in the neighborhood that Biggie lived in.
You know what? One of my greatest regrets is that I didn't save those little teeny tapes in my answering machine, because every voicemail was a rhyme. Like, Drew, eyes blue, I'm gonna come through, da da da. Like, and I saved none of them, and it's just like, I mean, they would have been like gold at this point. You know, I would say I have a bunch of Biggie stories, but one of them is when I first got the Def Jam job.
Okay.
And by then Biggie was on Bad Boy, but his record hadn't come out yet.
Right.
And I wanted to sign Junior Mafia. Biggie told me about Junior Mafia.
Okay.
And he introduced me to Daddy-O and Uncle
Rivera.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And Lance
Mm-hmm.
And, told me they had this group that Biggie was developing called Junior Mafia, and it had a female MC, and she was dope. And I heard the demo. I still have that demo, and it was crazy. And I brought them all into my office at Def Jam, which was like tiny. It was like smaller than like a rug. I mean, it was small, and it had no window and one working speaker.
Yeah.
In the stereo. But I called Russell, and I didn't tell him he was on speakerphone because I thought he'd be so excited. And I was like, yo, there's this group. It's crazy. It's Biggie's group. It's called Junior Mafia. And there's this MC named Kim. She's insane. And like everybody in the group is crazy. Like, they can all rhyme.
Right.
And he was like, yo, like, fuck that nigga Biggie. He's not going to sell more than 10,000 records outside of Brooklyn. Like, nobody but like 10,000 people and like you, because you have something to prove, care about him. He's not going to sell any records. And girls can't sell records. I tried with Boss. I tried with Nicki. It's not going to work. I was like, well, first of all, you're on speakerphone. And he was like, yo, you called me on speakerphone, tell me? And I was like, yo, my bad. He said, well, actually, he's like, you know what, Biggie? Fuck that. I already told you that. I told Puff this. I told Dre. It's not happening. Like, yo, no disrespect. And then I like just went off. I was like, yo, you're crazy. Like, I'm telling you. And then Big was like giving me the kill sign, like, Drew, like, you really, like, this is the job you wanted. Like, I've known you for 2 years now, and you finally, maybe 3 at this point, have the job you want.
He's telling you to relax because you're going in on your boss.
He's like, don't go in on Russell Simmons. I guess it felt like an eternity, but I guess
Okay.
now that I look at it, it was 94 and I only came to New York in 92. So it really was just 2 years.
Right.
But yeah, he was like, yo, Drew, you're bugging. So, I mean, obviously he didn't listen to me. I didn't get to sign Junior Mafia. Rob Tilo signed them at Atlantic.
Yes.
I got a little thank you in the credits. As did other A&R people at other labels that also wanted to and couldn't. So I'm not the only one. But that's one of my big stories.
That's a big hip hop fun fact.
Yeah, I tried.
I love that. And we're going to talk more and more about how you tried other times.
That's right.
Just to further cement the point that I'm trying to make when it comes to you having the eye and the ear and just having that gift of knowing talent and finding talent. Okay, so we fast forward to you working at Def Jam. What was that called? How did that happen?
So after the Empire Management job where I was a receptionist, I did get a job not answering phones as an executive at Zomba Music Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I signed Nas to his first publishing deal right before Illmatic dropped. I signed Eric Sermon to a publishing deal. So I was kind of close, but I still wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, which was make records, like sign artists, not just songwriters.
Right.
So over the 2.5 years, I guess, maybe 2, if like I said, it feels like it was a long time. It was really probably 2 years. Over the 2 years that I'd been in the city at that point, I'd met people, just kind of hanging out. Hi, my name is Drew Dixon. I want to do A&R, and the hot new shit is boom, boom, boom. And everyone's like, we know, you're Drew Dixon. We know, we get it.
Hungry.
Stop it. And so he knew me by then as I'd already, said that many times. And he was like, you're right. And you're generally right about the hot new shit. I get it. And so his ex-girlfriend at the time was a woman named Michelle Griffin, who's now actually married to Black Thought.
Okay.
So Michelle Griffin and I had become friends.
Yeah.
And Michelle called me and she was like, Drew Barina. She called me Drew Barina. She's like, Drew Barina, Russell Rush needs an A&R person and he knows about you and he knows how smart you are and he knows that you know what's dope. I think you should go for it. And I was like, of course, yes, of course I want to do that.
He's on my vision board.
Yeah. In fact, they both were, which is crazy, which makes me sound like a stalker, but I swear to God, it was him with her at a fashion show.
Michelle.
Yeah. And I didn't even quite, we became friends and I was like, I didn't have the vision board up anymore, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the woman who was with him in the vision board. I'm rewinding. This is back in my receptionist days. I was hanging out with her once and she wanted to go out and, I was on struggle. I had nothing to wear. Right. And she's like, okay, I'm going to lend you some clothes. And she opened her closet and handed me a dress. And I was like, that is the dress from the vision board. Yeah.
It's like magic.
It's like magic.
I tell people about manifestation.
That's
and
right.
vision boards. It's like magic.
It was literally the dress.
Yep.
And so
goosebumps.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So she recommended me for the job and he knew who I was. So I called, I guess, Simone, his assistant, or Joanne, but probably Simone. And I was told to come interview for the job.
Yeah.
And because he's Russell, he didn't have an office in the Def Jam building or even in the Rush Communications building or the Rush Management building. He took all of his meetings at home or in his car or at a restaurant, which I didn't know at the time, but I learned very quickly. So I go to the interview in his apartment on East 4th Street, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm told to go to the top floor. It's a several stories, whatever. And he's on the top floor, in his gym area on the treadmill.
Yeah.
And so he's on the treadmill. He's got a phone. He's on speakerphone. And I'm I sit on the bench press.
Right.
There's a sliding glass door where I think the model Beverly Peel was outside doing yoga. I mean, it's just a day in the life of Russell Simmons.
Yeah.
So he's talking to me, but he's also talking to somebody on the phone about something else. It's about maybe Fat Farm or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he in between talking to the person on the phone and me, he's basically offers me the job.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, how much? He's like, great. Okay, so go to Def Jam. It's at 160 Varick and tell Lior that you're the new A&R person. And I'm like, okay. He's like, oh, wait, well, how much do you want to make? And I was like, well, how much can I make? And he's like, I don't know, just how much do you want to make? And I was like, $45,000, because I was currently making 30.
Okay.
So I was like, $45,000. He's like, fine, fuck it. Tell Lior.
Wow.
Classic Russell. So I get to Def Jam And Russell hasn't told Leor that I'm coming. Leor was the new president. Leor started as president the day I got there. He replaced David Harleston, and he had moved over from Rush Management with Julie Greenwald, who was the VP of marketing.
Yes.
And I was like instantly hated because Leor seemed to think that I had some kind of relationship with Russell that I didn't have. But I didn't even get it. You know, I was like slow. I was like, why does he hate me? You know, he's like, I don't need any of Russell's tall, skinny bitches in my way. And I'm like, what? Like, and whatever. So that's how I got the job. You know, maybe like a week later, I called Biggie, like, yo, I got the job. Like, come through with Junior Mafia. Like, you know, I was like, hit the ground running, trying to make stuff happen. And that's around the time that I heard the interlude that became You're All I Need to Get By. But also, as this is all happening, I started in the conference room. Like, Leor didn't even give me an office at first. And eventually, I was like coming every day doing stuff. And he was like, okay, all right, I guess she's not leaving. So he gave me an office, like, you know. And then I started, that's when I found, I was doing the credits for Takal and heard the interlude that became the duet. So I'm doing stuff, but I'm not really getting a lot of direction or support. And
you said Takal?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, so the story of the Mary Meth duet.
Right. So we got to pause.
We'll pause before we get to that.
So now because now we know how you got the job at Def Jam.
That's how I got the job.
Which is an amazing story. Shout out to the $15,000 upgrade.
Right?
I don't know. In hindsight, that was pretty good? Was that what the people was getting?
I mean, honestly, I think the person who left was making more.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
You were happy with it?
I was happy.
Okay.
I was very happy.
So we're at Def Jam. Now let's talk your success at Def Jam, the accolades. And I do want to start off with Mary J Blige and Method Man, All I Need.
Okay.
You, my dear, was the one, the mastermind, the brainchild behind that amazing legendary record. Just talk to me about how that came into fruition. I know the story. I've heard you say it before, but please bless my audience.
All right. Wow. I'm happy to. So I was in the office, not being given like real A&R stuff to do. I was just told to do administrative stuff. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna just get in where I can fit in. I'm here. So at this point, I'm thrilled to just be in the building. I'm at Def Jam. I have a job there, even though I was not being given very much to do. I'm just amazed that I'm walking by like plaques for Public Enemy, LL, like, I mean, EPMD, like, you know what I'm saying? Like every day.
Surrounded by greatness.
I can't, Beastie Boys, right?
Right.
So I was like, I'm just going to get in where I can fit in. Like, I really do want to make records and sign artists and be part of the creative process, and prove that I have ears. But I will I'll just do the paperwork, whatever I'm being given by Leor's team, because, it's something.
Right.
So one of the tasks I was given to do was to type the credits for Method Man's first album, Takal.
Yes.
And so I was given like a big folder and a stack of papers that were like all the, splits and writer's credits and samples and producers on all of the, records, the tracks, the overall album credits, engineers, mixers, everything. The thank yous, whatever, right?
Right.
And the lyrics. And
things that we used to love back in the day, the booklets that came in the CD.
Right, and all
credits.
of that. Right, and so I have to type that to submit it to Polygram, which was the parent company, and then they also would simultaneously take those credits, give them to the art department, who would then lay it out.
Got it.
But first, somebody has to take all the stacks of papers and put them in one place, like type them up, and that was me. So I'm typing the credits and, pulling all the, paperwork together. But I'm also listening to the album just to make sure that it matches what I have in the paper. And it had the interludes. And one of the interludes was, Shorty, I'm there for you anytime you need me. For real, girl, it's me in your world. Believe me.
Nothing make a man feel better than a
woman. Clean with a crown that be down for whatever. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I'm supposed to just be typing. And it took my breath away. It was just, there was no music. It was just a cappella.
Right.
The meth voice.
Right.
And I'm like, what is that? I was like, this is beautiful. this is the most loving, romantic, selfless, touching thing I have ever heard a young Black man say in the vocabulary of hip hop, which is my language that I love, that I came here to be a part of. This is important. This is meaningful. Everyone has to hear this. And I took it home. And I actually forgot this until On the Record came out. And D'Angelo called me and reminded me, because at this point I'm living with D'Angelo.
That was your boo?
That was my boo.
Wait, the singer D'Angelo?
It was. He was
How
making
does it
brown
feel,
sugar.
D'Angelo?
It was. This is before we broke up.
Ooh,
and
girl, you live.
Angie entered the picture. Bless Angie. Bless Michael. Bless them all.
Oh,
But at the time,
ooh,
I was
Drew.
living with Michael. And
That's his real name?
yeah.
Nice, D'Angelo. Okay, Drew, go ahead, girl.
And I brought it home. And he reminded me. He was like, Drew, you played it like 50 times. Wow. And he said, your favorite line was, you my nigga, at the end. And he's like, you kept saying, he didn't say you my bitch. He said, you my nigga, like you're my, like equals.
Wow.
And he was like, you were obsessed with that. And, you know, it's also like, looking back on it, he was making Brown Sugar, which most people hadn't heard.
Wow.
And it reminded me of Brown Sugar. Like, because what I loved about his album is that it was also the first time we were hearing love, romance, vulnerability expressed. We'll leave shit down motherfucker out of it.
Oh, no, we don't. I love that song.
We can keep it right. But you know what I'm saying? As far as vulnerability and romance goes.
Yes.
In the vocabulary of hip hop infused soul. So it was R&B. It was really more soul. But it was, I mean, the drums, even I was there, you know, when he was making it, and he would get upset with the mixer, Bob Power, because he was like, I don't want it to be mixed like an R&B record. I want it to be mixed like a Tribe record. That's why I called you. You know what I mean? And so his record was made like a hip hop record. It just had musicality and instrumentation because he's a musician and a singer. Yeah. But it was like one way of getting at like young Black love with hip hop swagger.
Yes.
And this interlude felt like another way.
Yes.
And I was like, and I was obsessed with it. And I called Russell, who was always doing 20 things, and tried to get him to give me the opportunity to turn it into a song.
Yeah.
And he was like, I called Lior. The album is literally like due. Like, it's got to get turned in. It's on the schedule. Bring the Pain was out even before I got the job. I mean, there was no, you know, he was like, it's on the calendar. Like, we can't hold the album to make another record. Like, there's no reason to believe Method Man even wants it to be a record. Like, this is just your idea. Like, bless. Like, no, we can't do it.
Right.
So I let it go, but then I couldn't let it go. And then we were at a A&R like meeting retreat, I think, in the Hamptons, where like we all got like choppered out, like it was Succession or something with Lior.
Fabulous.
And we met with Russell, who was like floating in an inner tube in the pool while we all sat at a table. And I was like, guys, I can't let this go. Like, this has to happen because no one is going to hear it if it's just an interlude. Like, a fraction of the people who hear it, like, who need to hear it, you know, it will hear it if it's not a record, you know? I said, so I have an idea. Why don't we make it a remix and put it on the B-side of whatever the next single is? Just make it a B-side because we haven't pressed the single yet. So if we make it really fast, we can put it on the back. I've looked at the calendar. There's time, you know?
Wow.
And they were like, oh my God. Okay, well, what do you have in mind? I was like, well, it should be a duet. We need like a woman to sing on it. And they were like, okay, well, who do you think? I was like, well, I have somebody in mind, but I can't get her. But I could call my friend Lauryn Hill because I was friends with Lauryn. This is after their first album, but before The Score. And Russell Simmons was like, who the fuck is Lauryn Hill?
Whoa.
So I was like, okay. Well, I'll tell you who I really think it should be, but I don't know her. I think it should be Mary. And Puffy knows her, and you know Puffy. And like, you know, like he's like, well, call him. If you can get Puffy to do it, I will get like, you know, we'll give you like a week.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So I called Puff. He was like, okay, let me hear this interlude. So I hand delivered it to Bad Boy on 19th Street. And I left it with his assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got back to my office, there was a voice message on my answering machine from Puffy like, yo, call me.
Wow.
This shit is hot. Call me. So I call him and he was like, yo, I have an idea. I think you're onto something. Do you know the song by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, You're All I Need to Get By? And I was like, of course. He's like, well, can you sing it? And I was like, you're all I need. You know, I'm singing it. He's like, okay. Now imagine the track from Children's Story. Dun, 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 dun. I'm like singing the Tammy Terrell. He's like, shorty, I'm there. I was like, oh my God. That is fire. And so Pop's like, okay, great. Book Studio A, Old Hit Factory. Now they're both old and gone. So I book it and I got the reels there. Actually, there were no reels to get because it was just Mary. He just cut the track and put Mary on the vocal and then he flew in the interlude. I think it was maybe even just like a rough stand-in of the, just from the, the tape. Maybe we had the DAT. And then I played it for Lior, who started to realize like I didn't suck. He was like starting to realize, okay, she does something.
Right.
And he was like, okay, this is dope. This is actually really dope. But we have a problem. And they were like, actually, we'll make it the B-side, but let's shoot a video to it. Like it's dope. Like it's going to be the B-side, but it'll be kind of the A-side. And he was like, oh my God, wait, we have a problem. We can't do anything without RZA's approval because this is a deal signed through RZA's production company. And RZA doesn't even know we're doing this. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to send me Mary's vocal. This is Lior, with nothing else. And just say that we have Mary's vocal and she wants to do this like thing with Method Man and this interlude.
Uh-huh.
And so RZA heard that and was like, okay, I'll do it. And then RZA was like, okay, I need you to book Chung King. This is the old Chung King across from the police building. So I booked Chung King and Puffy worked at night and RZA worked during the day because Puffy was running Bad Boy during the day.
Right.
So during the day, RZA would work on his version, the Razor Sharp, what became the Razor Sharp mix. And then at night, Puffy would work on his version, but RZA couldn't know that Puffy was working on his version. So I had to tell the engineers at Puffy Session to rewind the reels, because they were physical reels,
right,
exactly to where RZA left them. We would mark them and rewind them, and then I would personally take them and give them to the engineers at Chung King and make sure he couldn't tell
the difference.
And then he cut his version, and then we had both versions. And then Lior and Russell and Julie and everyone, probably Kevin Lyles, Mike Kaiser, were all like, okay, this is great. Let's shoot the video. Riz was like, okay. But we shot the video to the Razor Sharp mix because it was RZA's call.
So the video that we know and love today is RZA's version.
Is RZA's version.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's how that record became what it is. And in fact, one of my fondest, another Biggie memory, is being in the studio at the old Hit Factory Studio A when Puffy was sort of doing the final mix. And it was really more like a rough mix, but it was sort of like listening to it all back from the top. And Mary was there, Puffy was there, Biggie was there, Meth was not there. My friend Jason Jackson was there, from who was also at Def Jam on the marketing side. And we danced for like 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes to that, just the original version of like Puff's version of that remix on a loop. And we were like, yo, we just stepped in it. We fucking stepped in it. But what is heartbreaking is that because I was also literally surviving Russell Simmons this whole time because the harassment had already started.
You were dealing with his harassment during the creation, like out the gate.
Out the gate.
Okay, because it was your first project.
Yeah.
Okay.
But from the gate, it was verbal harassment, inappropriate comments. Then it was grabbing me like in a restaurant, coming to my office, like exposing himself to me. Like, so I'm like making this record. I was then also making a soundtrack for the show. I have to deal with him because Lior was still like kind of taking me seriously, but not really. And this happened maybe, the duet probably happened like 3 or 4 months into my tenure, maybe. Maybe 2. I don't know. It's hard. It's a blur. But, I had to deal with Russell because Russell was the only person that really gave me anything to do. He gave me the show soundtrack to do. He was the one that really let me do the duet.
Yeah.
But he also was somebody that I had to be in front of to get his attention because he was like ADD. Like you couldn't, on the phone, he was like talking to like 3 people while you were on the phone with him. You couldn't get him to like focus.
Very busy.
So I had to be in front of him, but I also had to be in front of him, but also not alone with him. So I'm like navigating being in front of him, bringing a friend, not being alone, so I can get my job done, but also not be in a situation where he's going to like do something that I don't want him to do with no backup at the office. So because of that, I was just so grateful to get these records made that I didn't ever stop to make sure that when those credits got typed, I got a credit.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't get a credit on the song.
You skipped your own damn name?
I typed the credits for the show soundtrack, so I am co-executive producer with Russell Simmons.
Okay.
And I made the whole thing. I called everybody, got all those tracks, sequenced it, did the interludes on that too. But for this one, I had no credit. I don't have an A&R credit. I don't have a producer credit, which frankly I should have because it was my idea.
Right.
It won, I believe, Def Jam's first Grammy.
Nice.
I don't have a plaque.
And usually a producer will usually get a Grammy?
Yeah. Oh, the producer would get the Grammy.
Okay.
And it was my idea. That's production, right? Did
you not know, or was it just a mishap on your part because it was just so much going on?
There was so much going on.
But you knew that was something you were supposed to do.
I just assumed because I literally had to fight to make this thing that it would be a given.
A given by who?
I don't know.
Did you just think at the time of somebody
else is going to, whoever's doing the credits for that single is going to do it. And I was now working on the show soundtrack, which was also like a lot of work, a lot of juggling, a lot of hustling, like multiple like artists I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
I had to get those records all cleared. I'm dealing with legal. I have no real support. And I'm also avoiding Russell while also needing to interact with Russell.
Yeah.
So
a lot going on.
I didn't think to put my name on that duet. And until On the Record came out, I wasn't even in the Wikipedia entry. Like I'm not even named.
Hasn't changed?
I'm in the wiki.
Okay.
I don't have a producer credit. I don't have the Grammy. I don't have a plaque. I don't have a check. So for years, that record would come on and I would like get sad.
How do you feel now when you hear it?
I mean, I'm proud. I'm proud that, what is that, 25? God, it's more than that. 30 years later. It still matters. So many people have told me it was their wedding song.
Sure, it still matters. Just like you still matter.
So it's very gratifying. I never got the bag, in my career. So it's all bittersweet.
Even now, listening to the song, you still feel a bit sad?
All the records I helped to make, I love them. I'm proud of them. And it is bittersweet.
Yeah.
Because I never got the bag for any of it. Partly because I just was so in it for the love that I didn't stop to like, grab the bag, grab the credit, grab the...
When you say bag, are you referring to credit or money?
Both.
Okay.
I got neither.
Okay.
I got credits on the, like, My Love Is Your Love, Maria Maria,
Which we're going to get into when it comes to your Arista record days.
So I got credits on those.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, because I want to keep it of a celebratory moment of talking more about your accolades. Great. Love that story when it comes to Method Man and Mary J Blige. And congratulations. And you're deserving of all the flowers in creating that amazing song. As you tell the story, I'm visualizing. You're such a great storyteller. I'm visualizing how it all came into fruition. I mean, for one, the vision board, for one, and then next getting the call from Russell team and the whole process, or I guess not audition process, but kind of audition.
Yeah, a little bit. The interview.
Process to being so stuck in your idea of wanting to get this record done fresh off of just an interlude.
Yeah.
And bringing it up in meetings that they already told you no.
Many times.
Shut it down. I love that story because I want my audience to understand that when you have this feeling, this gut feeling, stick with it. And if you would have just took that no, there would be no Grammy. There would be no All I Need.
That wouldn't exist.
You would not be walking down the aisle with that song, whoever got married to that record. You know what I mean? And it's so important to our culture, and you did that. So again, just keep dreaming and stick to it. Like, that's kind of the message that I wanted to bring up with that. It gave me goosebumps hearing you just say how you stuck with it, and we're here with that record. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. And I do hope, because I do see myself as like the elder a little bit, talking to the young folks. It is about sticking with it.
Yeah.
I went to like a little private school, but I played basketball from like 4th grade to 12th grade. And I was tall for a while until then I wasn't.
Okay.
So I was a rebounder.
Yeah.
And, it's that same mentality where I would literally be like, get in the vicinity and you will get a second shot opportunity because I will get the ball. And if it was an offensive rebound, I just got the chip shot. Mm-hmm. If it was a defensive rebound, I got the ball and the outlet pass to the guards.
Yeah.
And at the end of games, I have a loud stomach, so that's on the mic. I'm sure it picked it up. When I did the documentary, they were like, so you said something really great, but then your stomach was like really loud. So we're not going to use that. I was like always at the end of games, like I would realize I had jammed 2 fingers. I had all these scratches. I had sprained my ankle.
Yeah.
But in the game, I did not notice. I was just in there.
In it to win it.
I'm looking at that ball, that orange ball, and I am going to get it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go back up with it until I get 2, or I'm going to just box out and pivot and get it to y'all to bring it down to our side of the court. Period.
And you brought those skills.
And that's how I move at the end of the day, if I believe.
Yes.
If I believe.
You believed.
If I believe. And I believed.
Love that.
I believed in hip hop so much.
And we're celebrating 50 years of it. Yeah. So your intuition was always right.
Yeah.
And then we have the show soundtrack. So let's talk about the show soundtrack, the process of that, submitting the songs. It was a lot of great songs on there. Tupac is on there. Yes. Biggie is on there. Bone Thugs, they shot you out on their song. Method and Redman.
How High.
Was that their first
collab? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that something like, how did that work being in control of that soundtrack? Did you guys pick songs from scratch? Was it your idea to say, hey, Meth, you and Rich should do a record?
Right. So I started out, once again, Russell gave me this thing to do. Mm-hmm. And then like nobody told me how to do it. Nobody gave me any resources. Nobody gave me any tools. So I'm like, okay, it's a soundtrack about hip hop. I asked Leo if I could go to LA where they were making it and like meet the directors. And he was like, no, why would you do that? You don't need some fancy trip to LA. I was like, never mind. I was just trying to figure out like, what is this movie?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. Whatever. It's
figuring out the tone. Like
yeah. But I was like, okay, that's cool. It's like a survey of hip hop circa 1993, 1994.
My favorite era.
Great time. So I am just going to like make this up. I'm going to call my favorite artist and I'm going to say, hi, my name is Drew and I work at Def Jam. And I think you're dope. And I think you should be on the soundtrack representing the Midwest or the South or the West Coast or women. Sadly, that's just like one category. It shouldn't just be or women, but that was what it was.
Right.
Or hip hop soul or kind of like the native tongues or, like, I think I want to kind of cover the different spots, right?
Right.
So, back then we had Video Music Box, and that's how I found out about Bone Thugs and Harmony. Mm. That's like where I would find out about artists that weren't like Hot 97 New York market artists. Mm-hmm. Like I would always call and request like Outkast. Like I actually found out about Outkast from like their Christmas sampler back when I was at Zamba, which is how I met L.A. Reid, but I'll come back to that. And then I would like request Players Ball again and again on Video Music Box. So I was in love with Bone Thugs and Harmony just from like whatever their like first joint was on Video Music Box. And I called and I was like, basically I would say to everyone, did you overcut your last album? If you overcut your last album, send me whatever didn't make the album. Let me see what you've got. Yeah. And that's how I found It's an Everyday Thing. That's how I got My Block from Tupac, who I did speak on the phone but never met.
Conversation. How was that with Tupac?
What's that?
The conversation with Tupac.
I mean, it was just cool. I was like, yo, I'm a fan. Yo, I love this song. Easy Mo B is gonna like touch it a little bit more, but like, I really appreciate it. And
Who was one of his producers already?
Yeah, exactly. Easy Mo B did that track.
Did he connect? I mean, what did you just find like phone book Tupac
How
number?
did I
Like,
do
how
it?
did that go down?
It's again, this also goes back to me being the kid of like politicians, local politicians. Like I had to just knock on doors. Like you just figure it out, right? So I'm not even sure. I just would maybe call the label. Who's the manager? I would just drop that Def Jam hard. Like I'm at Def Jam. I'm legit.
Yeah.
Who's the manager? I'm doing a soundtrack. Maybe every now and then I would like get Russell to call, but not really. Like I really just sort of called the label, got the manager, called the manager. Did you overcut? That's how I got my block.
And he was like, "Yo, yeah, I got a record for you." Cool.
Yeah, he sent me a couple, but I picked my block.
Dope.
And everybody sent me like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
That's how I got Sugar, What's Up Star, which I love that record so much. I also chose that because I wanted the female MC to be empowered. Like she's like, if I like what I see, then the drinks are on me. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted that. I wanted hip hop soul, so I wanted a Mary record. So we got Every Day It Rains.
And
I
love that song.
So I had all these DATs, like either cassettes or DATs, like stacked in a tower in my office. But I had no right to use these songs. It was just the manager sent them to me. And then I was like, okay, that's dope. And then I was like, okay, but now what? And so then like one day I think like Lior kept blowing me off. I kept trying to tell Lior I was still getting blown off. And so I met with Russell at the Bowery Bar, which kind of opened while I was at Def Jam. Like we switched from Tabak to the Bowery Bar when he opened Bowery Bar.
Okay.
He was like one of the owners.
Oh.
And I played him the songs. I'm not even sure like if we went to the car, whatever, but I played him the songs. Or maybe I gave them to him, whatever. Because again, I needed to be alone with him. I needed to be in his face to get stuff done, but I also didn't want to be alone with him. So I was always like juggling that,
Right.
So he heard the records and then he was like, yo, these are dope. We met again at the Bowery Bar and he called Lior and was like, yo, like, he's trying to tell Lior, like, she's got all these records for the soundtrack. And I was like, I'm going to, like, run out of time to turn these in time to meet the deadline. And the movie's coming out. Like, guys, like, somebody needs to call the lawyers and clear these records so I can. Lior calls me the next day. He yells at me, like, for going around him to Russell. I'm like, but, like, you don't ever talk to me. And then he's like, get the records. Let me hear these records through, whatever, tall, skinny, the Lior accent. So I bring in the stack and I start playing them. And after like the third or fourth one, he's like, stop. And he calls Julian, he calls Kevin Lyles in, he calls Mike Kaiser and he calls everyone in. He calls Frank Cooper in, the head of legal. He's like, this is fire. She's put together a soundtrack. It's fucking fire. But we need 2 things. We need to clear the songs. Frank, you're on it. And he like hired an outside attorney who's actually Gary Watson, who's in the film, who came in to help me get these, all the licenses that I needed quickly for all the records I'd gotten and to get the reels because I just had tapes. So we also had to get all the reels shipped to me. Don't get me started on my intern who I fired losing the Tupac reel at the 34th Street FedEx. And I went there and went over the counter. I was like, excuse me. And I went in the back and I found it.
Okay,
I was like,
that's how we got my block.
Excuse me. They were like, ma'am, you can't do that. I was like, watch me.
Whoa.
I found it. But anyway, so we had to get the reels. We had to get the licenses. But we also needed a single. So it was actually Julian Lior who said, let's get Meth and Redman on together because we need a single.
Yeah.
And I actually knew Eric Sermon because I'd signed him at Zamba. So I was able to like, reach out easily, help set that up. And that's how High came together. Yeah. As the single.
Look at that.
Yeah. And then it ended up like debuting at number 1 on the R&B chart, number 4 on the pop chart. And I did get the executive producer credit on that.
We got our credits, baby.
And we got our credits. And then
in the bag.
Well, actually, no, because this is sorry to go dark. I know we're trying to be uplifting, but I was actually assaulted when that record was still at the top of the charts. So I was negotiating with Russell at the time. I was trying to retroactively negotiate a point on the duet, and I was trying to negotiate a point on the soundtrack when I was assaulted. And I quit, and I just never
gave up on that.
I gave up.
So for the people that's listening, because I know you mentioned a few times the run-ins with Russell Simmons, and I guess for legal purposes, I just have to use the word allege.
Yeah.
So,
Fine.
okay, right. No disrespect to you at all. So, On the Record is a documentary again that came out. It's still out. It's on HBO Max. Please just check it out and watch it for yourself. Drew, you have accused Russell Simmons of rape. You plus 19 other women. And with this, with your journey at Def Jam, you talked earlier about having to avoid his advances a few times while working there.
Yeah.
And one night, like you said, it went really, really dark.
Mm-hmm.
If you like to right now, you can talk about that night.
Sure.
Okay.
So Russell would, so I had to walk this tightrope between needing to be in his physical presence to get anything done.
Right.
But also making sure that when I was in his physical presence, I was not alone, because it became clear to me very early on that he would be inappropriate if I did that. However, he was also always profusely apologetic. So if he oftentimes I would get on the phone with him and I'd need to conference him into 3 people in a row to get Suge Knight to clear Snoop's interlude, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I need to get Eazy-E to clear Bone Thugs, whatever, things where I just needed to crank through Russell calls.
Mm-hmm.
And in between the calls, he would say inappropriate things. Okay, you have no idea how excited I am while you're on the type thing, right? But he was more graphic.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I really need you to just focus on what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
However, in hindsight, I realized he was also grooming me and testing me.
Mm.
And I am also a survivor of childhood trauma.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Which I actually had repressed. Don't get me started. I didn't think that was real, but it is.
All right.
And it didn't come back to me until I became a mother.
Mm.
And so what I now realize is the part of me that was never rescued as a kid is the part of me that didn't know I could be fuck off. So instead of being stop, fuck off, I was stop. No, really, money, let's just focus, money. Let's just focus on what we're doing, money. Stop. And he's like, yo, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. It's fine, let's just focus. Just don't do that again, but let's just focus. Whereas now that I'm more healed, I'd be stop. Or I'm not fucking coming in here tomorrow. I'm healed. I wasn't healed. So I didn't have the base and the spine. I had the spine to fight for a record, but I didn't have the spine to fight for and protect myself. And so, he would always apologize, and then he would back off for a while, and then he would do it again. And then it would be a little worse each time. So then I would sort of increase my layers of protection around being not alone with him.
Right.
But it was also making me increasingly depressed. But I was also I worked really hard and I came here and this is the job I wanted. I need a hit with my name on the back and then I'll quit. And I didn't get my name on the back of the duet. So let me get it on the next thing and it needs to be a hit and then I can quit. And it was literally that window had just opened. I mean, the record had really just come out. Maybe it was out a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
When I ran into him, I was leaving the Bowery Bar. I was there with friends. He was there separately. He had left before me, and I actually made a point of not leaving before him because a couple times he followed me out. So I was like, okay. He'd been gone maybe 15 minutes. I was like, okay, he's gone. He lives a block away, right? I'm good. So I leave. It was drizzling. So I was like, I would have walked home. I lived on 26th Street. He was on 4th Street. I was it's not far. It's 22 blocks. I got it. But it was starting to rain. I was like, you know what? I'm going to catch a cab. But I didn't have enough money. And so the Chemical Bank ATM machine was around the corner. So I was going to go to Chemical Bank and get some cash and get a cab.
Right.
So I'm walking down 4th Street from Bowery, crossing Lafayette, about to go to Broadway. He lives on 4th and Lafayette. And he yells across the street, Drew. And I see he's sitting in front of his building on his cell phone, talking to somebody, whatever.
Right.
And he's like, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm just heading home. I'm just going to get a cab. And he's like, yo, you have the #1 R&B record in the country. You should get a car service. And maybe it wasn't even #1 at the time. I think it was. I'm pretty sure he said that. And I was like, whatever, I'm good. He's like, no, for real. He's like, you know what? I'm on with Simone. Yo, Simone, order Drew a car. He's like, you know what, Drew, I'm going to get you a car home. You should get a car home. You're a big deal. You're a big deal at Polygram now. Like,
The
you're really a
parent
big
company.
deal. Like, you are, like, you really did it. Like, the soundtrack is really great. And I was like, wow, thanks. He's like, you know what? There's a record, a new record, a demo that you are going to love, and I want you to hear it. I was like, okay, well, you know what? Like, do you want to go get it? Or he's like, you know what? Run upstairs with me. I think he was like, I have to go to the bathroom, whatever. And like, you can just take it. And I was like, well, you know what? Like, I can, you know, I was like, I'll play it for you. And I was like, well, I'd rather just take it. He's like, okay, you know what? Fine. I have to go to the bathroom, come upstairs. I'll tell you where it is. Just grab it. And I will, like, your car will be here. Like, by the time you get the CD and you go back downstairs, the car will be here. I was like, okay. I'm thinking at this point, okay, this is fine. He's also apologized for being inappropriate multiple times. And he also said, I'm a big deal at Polygram. So I'm like, okay, he's not going to fuck up in front of the white people. I mean, just straight up.
Wow,
like,
yeah.
I think I'm okay now.
You felt safe.
I'm
Because
safe.
you felt valued at that
I'm
moment.
valued. I've established myself now
Respected.
twice. I'm on the like radar at the parent company now. And I'm not even going to stay and listen to the CD. I'm going to take it. So I go upstairs, like we walk in together. I remember having a little bit of like a eerie feeling because it was quiet and there's usually like people there, you know,
Because
maybe
you've been there before.
I'd been there,
Okay.
but I'd never really been past the like first area.
Was this your first time alone with him?
This is my first time alone with him in his apartment for sure.
Right.
Oh,
In his apartment.
absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I'd gone in with people.
Right.
But he also used to have an office down the hall in the same building. So I had gone up there alone, like in the day, knowing like, he's like, I'm here with, you know, LL and so, you know, somebody else in the middle of the day. And I'd gone there.
Yeah.
But I'd never gone to the apartment alone. But I'd also never gone to the apartment past the front, like the where you walk in, other than the first time I was there for my interview.
Got it.
So I go in and I'm a little bit disoriented because it's like a little bit, it's just quiet. Like he also has an assistant. There was Joanne, I think was the assistant who lived with him. She wasn't around. So I was kind of thrown off by the stillness of it all.
Right.
But then I was sort of reassured because he didn't even like stay near me. He was like, I gotta go. He's like, I gotta, like, whatever, I gotta pee, whatever. He like goes in a different direction. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? He's like kind of away from me. He's like, go down that hall, just go straight till you get to the end. And when you get to the end, make a right in the last room.
Yeah.
And there's a CD player on the left. It's in the CD player. It's like I was like, it's in the machine. He's like, yeah, just turn the machine on. It's in the machine.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I'm like, you know, he's walking away. So I'm sort of like, I'm like, okay, just straight. He's like, you know, keep going straight. So now I'm like going deeper and deeper into his apartment, but I'm also feeling safe because he's not with me. So in my mind,
In close proximity.
I'm not
really.
in physical close proximity. I'm like, the car is probably here by now. By the time I get the CD, I'll be like back out and he's, you know, I'm never going to be like in close proximity with him in this space. So I walk down the hall, I make a right into what I now realize was his bedroom, but it didn't cross my mind. You know, I'm still
looking for the CD player.
I'm looking for the CD player. And also, even though he had been inappropriate before, he was always like sheepish about it and then would apologize. He was like, I'm sorry, I'm just an idiot. I'm an idiot. So I'm still not even thinking he's menacing. I'm thinking he's more like inappropriate and handsy.
Worst case scenario, you feel like this will just have to be my 10th time telling him
To,
no
like,
and to
back
stop
off.
and like,
That's what I'm-
please stop.
That's what I'm thinking. Worst case scenario. But like,
Yeah.
yo, that's what I'm thinking. Like worst case scenario. So I go in. I'm like, you know, not even really paying attention to the fact that it's his bedroom. I'm like, doesn't matter. Like, okay, I see the CD player. It's like very fancy. He's like rich. So it's like the kind of CD player where it doesn't just say like power. You know, everything is like smoothed over, you know, like, so I'm like struggling to find the power button.
Right.
I finally figure out how to turn it on. I turn it on and like, I figured out how to eject it and the tray opens and there's nothing in it. And so I'm like yelling to him. I'm like, Russell, there's nothing in the machine. There's nothing in the tray. And he's still not in the room with me. He's like yelling, "It must be something else on the shelf." I'm like, well, what is it called? Now I'm starting to get like a little bit like uncomfortable that I'm like here too long, but I'm still like, it's fine. He's still not even in the room with me. I'm gonna just find this thing and leave. And you know what's really crazy is that for years I have had this memory of being in a room with Russell Simmons with a glass window next to me with a looking for some amazing demo that I never found and wondering for like 20 years, what was it? When was that? And was it dope? Because I heard it was dope. And when is that memory from? And it wasn't until after I read my story in the New York Times and I read the other 3 stories and I realized this pattern that I was like,
it was bait.
That puzzle piece dropped into that night. It's almost like it was like that memory got knocked out of the chronology of what happened next. That, you know, I was like always wondering what was that CD. And then I realized after, like in December 2017, like I'm reading the article, I like look up from the article and I'm like, there was no CD. Because what happened next is I'm like, you know, picking up CDs, reading the names, yelling to him. And the next thing I know, I don't even hear him come in because I'm like focused, right? He like grabbed me. He's naked. He's wearing a condom. I'm now alone with him, and he is a different version of him than I have ever seen before in my life. Cold, no sheepish, no, he's fighting me. Well, I'm fighting. I'm losing, but I'm fighting. You know, I'm saying no. I'm probably fighting, crying, but fighting. I fought, you know, now I'm in his bed. I don't know if this is why he does yoga, but he had like a pin move, you know, where like one knee was like on a leg and then like the weight of his body was on my other arm and I'm pinned. And I'm still fighting though.
Is he saying anything at this point?
What he said was, stop fighting. Stop fighting. Like cold. Stop fighting. And at that point, honestly, this is crazy, but he has like a canopy kind of like, not with the cloth or whatever, but like, you know, the bars, like the metal. And I'm pinned and there's like a pair of handcuffs dangling from like over one of the bars. Now, and I never had any contact with them, but they scared the living daylights out of me. I was like, wait, this could get worse. This could get way worse. So I was like, and it's like, you know, flight was out of the question. It's too late to flee. It's like flight. What is it? Flight.
Fight or flight?
Fawn, freeze.
Oh.
It's flight, fawn, freeze. I think it's like, so flight was gone. I tried that. And then fawning, please. Like I begged him. And then it was like, freeze. And it's actually crazy. I actually, you know, like I work out. And whenever they try to get me to do like the either push-ups or the like chest presses, I like go back to that. I'm like, I don't have that, like that strength.
You felt like you never had that? Yeah.
I still don't. I'm terrible at push-ups.
Right.
But.
And in that position takes you back to that place.
Exactly.
Right.
And that I could not have been weaker in that position.
Right.
And that's what happened.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. Even though you've said it since you came out with the New York Times story in 2017, that was your first time actually saying that publicly.
Yeah.
And again, Russell Simmons has denied that ever happening. Just want to put that out there. Right. He actually made a statement. I'm trying to see. I think I have it here. He said, "These horrific accusations have shocked me to my core, and all of my relations have been consensual." He has other statements that I probably will quote later. But when you read that, how did that make you feel?
You know. I thought it was just me until the Me Too movement started and two women came forward. And that's when I decided to come forward because I realized, I was like, oh my God, he's a serial predator. Like I never understood. I was like, why did he snap on me like that? Why did he do that to me?
All those years you thought it was just you.
Yeah.
You thought it was an isolated
And I
situation.
blamed myself. Like, what did I do? Why did he think that why would he do that to me? You know? And then I realized when the other two women came forward that he had done this to other people. And that's when I went to the New York Times and I wasn't going to let them use my name. And then the Jenny Lumet piece came out.
Right.
Which was very similar to mine. I didn't know Jenny Lumet at all. I actually met her maybe a month after the New York Times article came out. We met for lunch. We'd never met before. And she asked me, because it was the same room, if I remembered anything about the room that was distinctive. And I started to describe the bed, and she just started bawling, like the bars. And we both did. And the waiters were like bringing us tissue. They were like, "Are you guys okay?"
Right. Because maybe for her as well, she thought that she was the only one.
Oh, I think she probably did.
And when you meet someone saying "me too," and then your stories kind of have similarities,
that's it.
It's like, oh shit, I'm not alone.
I'm not alone.
And I'm sure that feeling of feeling like you're not alone is overwhelming and emotional in itself.
It is overwhelming.
That's the beautiful thing about the Me Too movement.
That is a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, because of what happened with the documentary and Oprah's exit and the way that went down, it created these fractures in the relationship with a lot of the Russell Simmons survivors, because we all kind of found ourselves in the middle of this storm. And it really damaged a lot of those relationships, which is heartbreaking to me, because it was sort of like the closest thing I said to them, and I said at the time, I said, this is the closest we'll ever come to having a witness, is each other, you know? And it was like really comforting. And then it just became chaos.
Between you and the other
Well, it became
victims?
chaos when Oprah Winfrey exited as the executive producer right before Sundance. And people were trying to, I think, get some of us to agree with her decision or whatever. It's not clear to me, but it became very chaotic behind the scenes.
It caused a division amongst you and the other women.
It caused a division between us, and it also just made it like hell for us. It was already going to be scary enough to be in this movie, but we were in a movie that then we had to defend not just against, you know, Russell Simmons, and in my case, L.A. Reid, but also we had to defend our involvement in a film that Oprah had dropped at the last minute, like a hot potato. So it created a lot of stress, and stress doesn't bring out the best in people, and, you know, myself included. I mean, we were all terrified. And because I'm so predominantly featured in the film, like, a lot of pressure was placed on me to stay or to go. I mean, I wasn't really pressured to stay. I really wasn't. In fairness to the filmmakers, they kind of laid off. But then I decided to stay.
You had a moment where you felt like you didn't want to anymore?
There was like a 3-day period where I was like in the fetal position, and I was like, I'm out.
After Oprah's departure, which you're not quite sure why. You never spoke to her?
No.
Never met her?
Never met her. So I don't understand it, but I was going to back out too. I mean, she's Oprah Winfrey, right? I mean, I've admired her, like, basically, like, as long as she's been Oprah Winfrey, to my knowledge.
Right. And I'm not quite, well, from my understanding, the reason why she walked away from the film is she was quoted saying creative differences between her and the producers of the film.
Right, which was just kind of perplexing, because she'd been very involved in the film for 7 months, and Harpo submitted it to Sundance. Like, it wasn't the filmmakers that submitted it. Harpo, her company, submitted it. And there was actually even a press release that came out on December 2nd, 2019, in which Harpo referred to me as a brilliant former record executive, and it said that Oprah Winfrey is proud to be the executive producer of an Untitled Me Too documentary premiering at Sundance. That was December 2nd, 2019. She exited on January 10th, 2020. So
a little over a month later.
Right.
You were brilliant.
And she was happy to be film.
She was proud of the film. Her company submitted it to Sundance. Right. She also was quoted even after her departure saying that she believes these women, including you.
She has said that.
So, yes, she was quoted saying creative differences, but was there actually a quote with her saying that she felt that there were inconsistencies?
There were also there was a quote that I believe she gave both on Gayle King's show and also in the New York Times, where she said she believed all of us, but she felt there were inconsistencies in my story. And I would like to know what those inconsistencies are.
Mm. Coming from her Oprah Winfrey, who we all as Black women
admire. I still admire her. I will always admire her. And I blame the toxic patriarchy. And she is also, in spite of all of her incredible power, still, we're all Black women in the world. And so I'm prepared to accept her apology.
Are you looking for an apology? Would you like an apology?
Owed an apology because what inconsistencies in my story are you talking about?
Right. Yeah.
That's hurtful. And it's also helpful to Russell Simmons. Whether that was the intent or not, it creates just a little bit of confusion, just a little bit of a cloud for him to slither on back out, which is exactly what he's done.
Watching the Breakfast Club interview, he brought up Oprah Winfrey's name multiple times as if that was something that should be considered to the point to somehow prove that he's innocent. Mm-hmm. Oprah Winfrey backed out. I mean, there you go. I mean, Oprah, it was like, ugh.
It was very painful for me. My phone blew up. Jenny Lumet called. She asked me to tweet something for her. She's not on Twitter. I mean, it was painful. Salai Abrams, who's an incredible, woman and a survivor, also spoke out about it. It was painful for all of us. So, yeah, I mean, I accept that was not her intention, but that was what the result was,
right?
Is that it gave him room to cast doubt on all of us and our credibility with his platform and his power. It's very harmful.
You mentioned that you would like an apology. You feel like you're owed that from Oprah. What do you want from Russell?
Oof. Tough.
Part 2 with Drew Dixon will continue next week. I created a space where we can celebrate the unsung and the undervalued. A place where we focus on the many talents and influences for women within the culture, in hopes to inspire women everywhere to overcome adversity in a male-dominated world. Welcome to Woman in Hip Hop.